In our last video, we created an custom agent in our own custom pool of agents, and we also saw how we can execute the build using this particular agent or this particular Udemy pool that we just created. So it was all working fine, and we also saw how we can get the published output over there, and everything was working as expected, which was pretty cool. And now that I want to see how we can publish a zip artifact of the .NET Core web application that I have. So I can also write a task something like this, which is going to be publishing my application in a zip file, something like this as an artifact, and then I can use this for deploying into my IIS server in my local machine. So these are something that we can do while doing the execution of our build, and also we can see how things work. So basically, while we do the build, we don't really try to execute or even deploy the application within our Internet Information Server or IIS. Rather, we do the deployment actually in the release cycle, which is in the release pipeline. We don't do that in the build pipeline. But in reality, you actually need to have the artifacts, which is something that you need to be deployed during the release cycle. So now I'm saying a new terminology called artifacts, which is something that you obtain in the process of build process, and then you deploy that particular artifact in the release cycle in one of the machines. So basically, in some companies, they only use the build process. For the release process, they actually use a third-party tool, something like TeamCity or Octopus, and some of the most popular tools which are available in the market, which actually do the deployment of the application in their own machine. And I have seen many companies doing their own practices, and the most popular these days are Octopus, which actually do the deployment of the application in a remote machine or maybe in a remote virtual machine or something like that. But you can do the exact same thing using the release of the Azure pipelines, which does that thing. But I'm actually not going to talk about the release yet, but I'm going to show you how the actual pipeline is going to work and how things are actually working. So you can see that the build has been maybe completed. So if I do a refresh here, right, it's still loading. And let me go inside. You can see that it is trying to do the initialize, doing the checkout, then it's copying the file into our machine, and then now it is trying to publish the build artifacts. You can see that this is the one which I was talking about. It is gonna zip that particular file, and then you can see here the finalized stuff has been done. And now if I go to the summary, you can see that there is this drop file. And if I go to the view content this time, earlier we saw just the Selenium test code, but this time you'll also see a EA demo app.zip. So this is the application zip file, which actually has our application, and the UI test actually holds all the Selenium related stuffs, which is going to be used for executing our test. So this is how we can actually do the things of deployment in the build process. We can also do one more cheat here. We can create a Selenium test to run and see how it actually works. We can extend the same thing for our release cycle as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an edit here, and then after this particular zip has been done, I would like to see if I could able to run a Selenium test. So I can go to the task and I can search for test, and you can see there is something called as Visual Studio Test. I'm going to select that, and I know that my test has a DLL of the **. Oops. So I'm just gonna copy this guy. I'm gonna paste it, and I'm gonna know. I know that I have something called as Selenium over here, and I'm just gonna leave this guy as it is, and it contains a mix of UI test. So you need to check this because only then it will make the test session running in interactive mode. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave the test platform as latest because I actually have Visual Studio 2019 installed in my machine. So I'm just going to leave that. and I'm gonna set everything as it is for now. I'm not gonna run things in parallel as of now, and I'm gonna just add that, and you can see that it has added things for me over here. So I'm basically gonna run this, and maybe I don't really require this particular search folder because sometimes it won't work as expected. So I'm just gonna remove that, and I'm gonna hit save. Right, and I'm gonna save this again. And now if I try to run this, what will happen is it is gonna build the exact same thing which was happening before. So it's gonna run the build process, then it's gonna deploy the it's gonna create a zip file, and also it is gonna run the Selenium test that we have in our repo, and then it's gonna run that for me in my local machine. Of course, it is gonna fail as of now. The reason is because it has not deployed in my internet information server yet, so that's why the test is gonna fail. But you can still see the flavor of the test running in my local machine. So we'll see what's really happening. So let's go to the build again. And you can see that the execution is happening right now. It has did the publish, and then the VS test, I was expecting the test to happen, but I don't think it has really happened here. So let me see what has happened. And it says that it couldn't able to find the matching assemblies, which is nothing but the selenium.dll. So I'm just gonna go back to the build again. I know what is the problem basically. So if I do the edit, so here you can see that this particular slash is making the difference basically. So we need to have this particular input to be a little more dynamic. So this is not the way it should be looking like. So I'm basically gonna be doing exactly the same thing, but in a different sense. I'm just gonna have the input like test assembly version 2, Selenium as first, and then test DLL and test adapter and object, and then I'm just gonna hit save. I will also add the search folder, which is something required, and then I'm gonna hit run. So this way it is going to be running the whole things for us. So let's see what's going to happen. And now you can see that it is currently running the .NET build release, and I would expect this time something should happen for the VS test. There you go. You can see that it is actually running the Selenium test for me. It has opened the browser, but it has closed that, and the reason is fine because we are not trying to run the whole test here. We're just trying to see if that particular Chrome browser is at least called and it has opened or not. I could see that that's actually happening. So now if I go to the build and if I go to the summary, you can see that it actually shows that the test has got failed. So there is a nice report here saying there is a total one test and it has got failed. And it has like 0% of passing rate, which is fine, and also shows that during the execution there was something wrong and it was not handled. So there is a window error reporting do not show UI not set. If window error dialog pops up in the middle the UI test execution, then the test will hang. So alright, so this kind of warning. And now if I just go back to the build over here, and if I go to the tests, you can see that the same report comes in for us, like what's really happening behind the scene. And once I click the test, it also shows me that there is no such element to locate, which is fine because as I said before, our application has not been deployed yet, and that's the reason the test is currently failing, and we could able to see that this is going to be throwing us an error, which is fine for now because in our release cycle or in the release pipeline we will see that this whole test will actually pass. It won't be complaining as these kinds of error. So that's it guys. This is how we can actually add the build pipeline to have the Selenium test as well. In our next video we'll do exactly the same thing, but I'm going to show you the taste of the classical pipeline instead of using the modern YAML pipeline.